Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Self-Improvement Saturday, episode 4. Episode 4. Wow, we're racking them up. So that means we've been doing this for 1 month. This is the 4th episode. Today is July 22nd, 2023. And my name is Daniel Midson-Short. Hello if you're joining live, and hello if you're watching this later. Great to have you here. Either way, this is Self-Improvement Saturday. And I'm excited for today's episode because I have a topic that I've been I've been thinking a lot about, and I've been researching, and I've actually been running a speech around this topic for the Toastmasters speech contest. And that is the topic of authenticity. So I want to do a bit of a deep dive into the topic of authenticity and how to be more authentic in your life. This is something that I know I have struggled with personally, and I know that it's something that I think I'll always have a challenge with in my life, like many people do. So I want to do a deep dive into that today. As well as that, I wanted to share a quick little update of one thing that we did last week, myself and another amazing YouTuber. So I want to share that as well. And then at the end of the episode, if we have time, we'll do some Q&A. If anyone has comments or questions or whatever, you want to pop them in the chat, feel free to. It would be great to hear from you, and we can explore those if they come up. But yes, that's going to be our agenda for today. So buckle up. We got some good stuff to talk about around the topic of how to be more authentic as we go. Before we get into that, I wanted to share an awesome experience that I had last weekend. It was actually last Sunday, myself and a fellow YouTuber named Patrick Parker, who is an incredible gentleman. He is an American expat. He actually lives in Norway now, has an incredible life story. He is a licensed therapist, a classical musician, and just an all-round amazing person. It was a real pleasure to meet him. He reached out to me a couple of weeks ago because he'd seen my video on life in your 30s, the life lessons that I'd learned. And he asked, could we kind of do a collaboration video and talk about life in your 20s versus life in your 30s and do a little life audit on where he was at in his life? And I thought, hey, what a great idea. So we spent about an hour and a half actually kind of exploring some different questions and ideas and things that I had learned during my 30s going into my 40s. He's now 35 years old, I'm 45 years old. So it was a good perspective kind of to talk through the different things. And he has so much wisdom and value himself. So all that to be said, we launched thanks to Patrick, he launched the video yesterday. So I'm going to pop that in the chat. For anyone who would like to check it out, I recommend subscribing to him as well if you get a chance. Great content there. And as I said, just a wonderful human being, very warm, kind person, full of the joy of life, which is always great to see. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about YouTube is that you can kind of connect with people that you never knew were out there, and you have this amazing commonality with them just through a remote experience like this. So hopefully I get to do that with more people. And if you are someone who's watching this who think, hey, it might be good to collaborate, reach out to me. Go onto my Instagram or via my website, send me a message, and let's see if we can chat and collaborate in some way, because I think there's some really valuable ideas out there that we can share and we can explore. And if it helps us to grow, then that's the most important thing that I think. So yes, check out the interview with Patrick Parker. Patrick, if you see this, thank you for the time and the effort putting that video together. It was really enjoyable, and I hope it was valuable for you personally too, to explore those ideas that we talked through. So that is one of the updates for this week. Just generally too, giving you a bit of a life update. I'm still working away on my speeches for the World Championship of Public Speaking, which is coming up in mid-August. It's been a bit of a strenuous week with work and also with preparing for that. And so I've had to kind of balance my time and find the way to work on that. Creative work is always challenging. If you've ever done any yourself where you're trying to create, whether it's something you're writing, or maybe it's something, artistic, music, or piece of art or something like that, or you're working on a business problem, or there's something in your mind that you're trying to create or improve, you know well that it takes a lot of mental energy. And this week I've found myself really kind of exhausted because I've been really trying to delve into how can I make my speeches valuable and impactful. And I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and really there's two components to any speech. There's the skill as a speaker that you have, which I've worked on for almost 12 years now, which is incredible to say. But then there's also the substance of the speech, and trying to get that right, trying to understand what it is that you're wanting to share, what the message is, what the value is to the people you're speaking to. The substance is the really challenging part when you're creating a piece like this. So I've been working very hard on that in the background, and hence there's been less videos on my channel, but I promise that after this contest is over in mid-August, there'll be a flourish of new content as well as these lives. But in the short term, I think I'll do as many short videos as I can, as well as doing these Self-Improvement Saturday episodes every week. So all that to say, things are great, things are on track. Definitely been a bit of a challenging week mentally, but very rewarding as well. Okay, let's talk about authenticity. One of my favorite topics to explore and to discuss with people, because I think we all, on one level, understand what it means to be authentic, but then on another level, we don't really understand how to do it, how to be it, and especially how to maintain it. I think that is one of the things I'm understanding, is that we have periods in our lives where we are very authentic, we're very real, and then we tend to drift out of that. We fall away from being our authentic selves, and we get influenced by others, or we start to kind of act in a way that's not really authentic. And we have to go back to it. We have to re-find ourselves in a way at different times of our lives. So this idea of being authentic is something that I wanted to explore in depth for the speeches that I'm writing, but also just because I'm interested in it. I want to be a more authentic person. And it is actually the feedback I get very commonly on my channel. When people message me or write to me, they'll say, I love how authentic you are in your content. And I really appreciate that, because that is one of my values, is to try my best to be my genuine self whenever I'm speaking, or whether I'm meeting someone one-to-one and living my life. And it's not always easy, as you well know. With this in mind, I wanted to share a couple of books that have been useful for me. One that I just got the other week, which is called Authentic, by his name is Stephen Joseph, who is a psychologist and psychotherapist. It is a great exploration of the topic of authenticity. And he uses a lot of the lessons from Carl Rogers, who was a great therapist and psychologist, and also Abraham Maslow, which, if you've watched any of my content, you know I love Abraham Maslow and the concept of self-actualization. So I was excited to read this book and explore the sort of deep understanding of what authenticity is and why we don't become our authentic selves. So it's one of those things that it took me a while to understand, but I think Stephen's book really helped me to kind of solidify a couple of the ideas for myself. So I have, as always, I have my notes, and it's quite extensive today, actually. So hopefully we'll go for about half hour here, and we'll see what we get through. And then again, if you have comments or questions or things, we can talk through those at the end. Another book that I have been reading is a very heavy book called The Map of Consciousness Explained by Dr. David Hawkins. And if this topic or this heading sounds kind of dense, trust me, this book is heavy. I have in the past tried to read this book, and it was too much for me. I just wasn't in the place where I could kind of explore at that point. But interestingly, as I'm reading more about topics like prosperity and law of attraction and universal mind and all these weird things that are out there, this book sort of spoke to me in a way where I thought, maybe it's time to come back to it. And interestingly, I think it maps well with authenticity, this idea of finding consciousness and understanding what it is for you. So I won't go too much into that one, but I want to say, if you want to like a very heavy version of what authenticity is and finding your authentic self, check out some work by David Hawkins. It's well worth a read and a reread many times. There's some dense ideas in there. So let's talk about, from my perspective, what I've learned about authenticity. There's some good ideas here that I think will be valuable for you too. The first thing I want to talk about is authenticity important? Do we actually need to be authentic in our lives? The reality is that we can get away with not being authentic. We can be a fake version or a manufactured version of ourselves if we want to be. You can kind of lie, you can put on a persona or a social mask, as some psychologists call it. You can kind of fake your way through life if you want to. And to a point, you will actually succeed quite well. We see a lot of people in the social arena, maybe in politics or in the entertainment world or business or things like that, where they do put on a persona, a way of behaving that may or may not be their authentic self, but they kind of hide behind it in a way because the persona gives them power. And you've probably felt this at times in your life where you as a person, it's easier for you to be inauthentic. It's easier for you to be a little bit fake or to be a, whatever you want to say, an abridged version of yourself so that you can actually get what you want or you can get ahead in the world. And that's my question is, do we actually need to go beyond that? Can it be enough for our lives to be an inauthentic or a fake version of ourselves and cope? And the short answer is, for some people, yes, it can be. You probably know people in your life who live their entire life with a persona and they kind of just exist in that and that's who they are. But I would suggest, and I would guess, if you're watching this video or you're here live right now listening to this, I would guess that you probably don't value being inauthentic. The problem that I see with being inauthentic is that eventually it makes you feel empty. You start to feel like something's missing or you're hiding. That's the experience I've had, is when you're inauthentic or you're a persona version of yourself, it's like you're hiding something. And as we all know, secrets, they become like a burden or a prison that we live in. And if we're hiding who we truly are, or we're not expressing who we truly are, we're not being the person and doing the things that are important to us, we don't live a fully actualized, explored life. And I think it was, I don't know if it was Socrates or one of the wise philosophers said, the unexplored life is not worth living. And if you resonate with that quote, then you know that inauthenticity is not for you. So the short answer is, do we need to be authentic? No, we don't. But if you want to live a fully actualized, rewarding, rich life, I think that authenticity is well worth exploring and leaning into, especially as you grow and you develop and you get a little older, definitely. Let's next talk about what authenticity isn't, or what is not authenticity. I don't know how you say that clearly, but let's look at what it isn't, because I think there are some mistakes that I've made or I've perceived in the past, and especially in the book Authentic by Stephen Joseph, he talks about what it isn't as well, and I think it's worth exploring. So what authenticity isn't, from my perspective, is complaining or being a victim. So if you're just going around in the world thinking that the world owes you something, or that it's not fair, or somehow you've been treated poorly, which happens to us all at times, but if that becomes your story, even though you're expressing what's coming out, that isn't being authentic. That actually isn't. That's you being a victim or letting life take over and control you. So you've got an external locus of control. That's one of the most important things I had to understand, because you do meet a lot of people who are very expressive about their problems or their pain or whatever. And it does seem like, in a way, they're letting their true selves out, but it's actually not their authentic self, because they're just using it as a device either to get sympathy or to have a reason to not do something in their life. So this idea of being a victim or complaining, or that, those are not authenticity. And it's hard when you fall into that trap to see, oh, okay, you might even think you're being authentic, but you're actually just being a victim. The second thing is, authenticity is not about being pushy or being manipulative. Very often we see people in life, and you've probably met some of them, maybe you've been one of them, who tends to push or be overbearing with people. And we've all experienced that with people. And you might think that that person is being authentic in a way because they're expressing who they are to the world. They're telling the world what they want. Sure, in a way, that's what's happening. But at the same time, they're using it as a device. They're using it kind of like a mask or a way to push their agenda that actually isn't rewarding for them, and it's not helpful for the world. So this idea of being aggressive or pushy or overbearing, that is also not authenticity. The other thing that authenticity is not, I believe, is it's not being overly expressive or dramatic or whatever. I want to put a caveat here. If that is who you truly are as a person, if you're a very expressive out there person, maybe it is more authenticity for you. But if you want to be an authentic version of yourself, it doesn't mean you have to pour every emotion out to the world constantly and express every single thought or feeling and put it out there. That's not what it's about. We see a lot of that on YouTube and social media, where people, they have the crying video or whatever, and maybe that's cathartic for them in the moment, or they're being overly expressive. Human beings are attracted to drama. We love it. So the risk is that you think that by being overly expressive or dramatic, that somehow that's being authentic as well. Again, if that is who you truly are as a person, if you are a very emotive type person, and I know some people like that, I'm sure you do too, then maybe that is closer to authenticity. But if you want to be an authentic person, it doesn't require you to be that. It just requires you to be your genuine self. And if it's times that means being more emotional, it does, but it's not required. So to recap, complaining or being a victim is not being authentic. Being overbearing or being pushy is not being authentic. And then being overly expressive or dramatic isn't necessarily authentic as well. So keep those three in mind, because I think those can be mistakes that you can fall into when you're trying to find your authentic voice. They do tend to trap us sometimes. Let's now talk about what I believe are the ways that you can start to find your own authenticity, or how to be more authentic in your life. So the first thing that I have learned is spending time alone really helps. The world we live in today is very crowded. And even if you live on your own, in your own space, you find, because of the influx of media and the internet, it's very easy to get overcrowded mentally, to constantly be connected. And I'm realizing as I'm saying this, you're probably watching this live or you're on YouTube, so I'm kind of going against what I'm saying here. But the idea is, if you truly want to tap into your authentic self, there are times where you need to let all that go. And you need to sit in your own space, whether it's a bedroom or I like to sit on a balcony because it's kind of outside and there's a bit of fresh air and nature. But sit there and just be present with yourself. And this is very tough to do. It's very hard because there's a tendency now to lean into, well, let's get some entertainment, let's get some distraction, let's learn. Especially for me, I'm like, let's learn something, let's think about something. But sitting in your own authentic energy for a while, if you want to call it that, or awareness, and just being present for 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sitting in it really, really helps. I also find another way to do this is to go out into nature somewhere by yourself. So go walking or go to the ocean or something like that, because it just gives you a bit of headspace that's different. And what will start to happen is, if you give yourself that time, your authentic self, that time to open up, it will start to speak to you more. It will start to say, hey, this is important, or this isn't important, or you've been saying this, but this isn't quite right, or whatever. You will hear your own voice more when you actually start to sit for a little bit of time. So I would suggest, if you're struggling with feeling authentic, find a place and find some time to just sit and be alone. And again, by that I mean, don't be alone on your phone. Sit still and just see what comes out. And sometimes, honestly, that's terrifying. I haven't done this experience, but I know there are some people who really recommend sensory deprivation tanks for this, where you're a floating tank, where you're actually in a dark sort of tank with water and everything, and apparently your brain goes crazy. But I may try that in the future, because I think there's something in that where it starts to let go of all the noise of the world, and you find more of your authentic self. So that's the first thing. The next thing is to spend time on your passions and your interests. Not things that you're doing because you think you should, or because other people are doing them, or you want, because you want to have a social aspect, but things that you are genuinely personally interested in. And there's no judgment here. It is whatever you love to do. So it might be something like, I love to read, I love to write. Those are my things. I love to speak. I love to create speeches. For you, it might be artistic, it might be physical, it might be something to do with sports or travel or whatever. But invest time in doing that, because that will give you a sense of realness, and you will connect with it much more if it's for you and you're practicing and spending time in it. I've shared this before in different videos, but it took me until I was 35 years old to actually start speaking and doing public speaking and speeches, because I wasn't tuned into my authentic self. And so when I started doing that, totally different experience than I'd ever had before. So whatever it is for you, explore your passions and hobbies and interests, and spend time in them. Invest in them for yourself. Don't worry what other people think. Don't worry if it's for a success or whatever. Just do it for you, and you'll find a total difference will start to come over you. Third thing, which is very hard to do, and I've been practicing this a lot lately, is to stop lying. Stop lying to other people and to yourself. And I realize this is kind of confronting when I say it. The idea of lying is something that we all accept from other people and from ourselves. And I've been really thinking about this a lot, is why do we lie? Why do we feel it's okay to tell white lies or half truths or withhold the truth from other people when we're in social situations or at work or whatever? It's because it's easy. It's because it's easier to not tell the truth than it is to tell the truth. If you tell the truth to someone, you might offend them. You might come across as offensive. You might come across as, not what they want to hear. And that's uncomfortable. Now, I'm not, by saying stop lying, I'm not necessarily saying go around and start abusing people and telling them direct, harsh truths to their face. But what I'm saying is, if you don't want to do something, let's say someone invites you somewhere and you don't want to do it, say to them, you know what, I appreciate the invite, but I'm not really interested, or it's not something I feel like doing. And just be honest about it, rather than making an excuse and saying, oh, I'll have to check my schedule, or think I'm busy that weekend, or whatever. Just practice not lying. Just tell them the truth about what it is that you're feeling or thinking. If someone asks your opinion about something, tell them the truth about it, and just sit with that discomfort of telling the truth, because in the discomfort is your authenticity. That's where you start to find it a little bit more. And people will trust you more because they know you always tell them the truth. Will you still lie sometimes? Will you tell half truths or withhold? Yes, you will. It's just how we are. I do it all the time still. But if you have that awareness, it starts to change how you are as a person and how people react to you. So as best you can, try to stop lying to yourself and to other people. As part of this, and I kind of already mentioned this, but the other part is stop withholding. So if you are feeling something, if something's important to you, whether it is an activity or it's something you want to express to someone or whatever, don't withhold it. Don't deny it. Actually express it to the person, even if it means risking some rejection, even if it means maybe not succeeding in the way you thought you would. Have the courage to express what it is that's important to you. You will feel much more authentic and much more free if you can do that. Again, I want to be careful here to delineate and say, don't be offensive to people. You don't have to tell them off or be mean. But if there's something and there's an intention of helping and supporting people behind with telling them the truth and not withholding, then maybe it's worth doing. I've had some experiences with family members in the past where they've had blind spots in their life, and I decided to tell them the truth from my perspective of what I thought was happening. And it was tough. We had some disagreements, we had some fallouts for a while, and it happened, but we're both better people for it. And it was easier to not tell them, to withhold it, but telling them actually helped them to grow as well, and it helped our relationship to be richer. So stop withholding. That's another part of being more authentic. The next one is to choose your own direction. And this is something that I think is it's a bit of a cliche in life now, but live your own life, be your own person. But how often do we really truly do it? How often do we actually say, this is the direction I want to take in my life? This is the person I want to be. This is what I want to do. This is what I want to have, and stick to it. Very rarely, I think. I'm as guilty of this as anybody else. But if you fall into the habit of living other people's version of your life, you will start to feel inauthentic. We all do it to some extent because we have to fit into society, into a family, into a work culture, whatever. But if you can start to decide your own direction, navigate your own ship, whatever metaphor you want to use, that starts with having a plan, having goals, having ambitions, having a strategy. That will really help you to become more authentic, because the true person you are can guide you very clearly, but you have to tune into that person. You have to be willing to face the fear of failure and the risk of rejection and whatever that comes with that. But people will respect you for it as well, much more, and you'll find you're much more free if you want to do it. So as much as you can, choose your own direction in life and sit with it and stick with it as long as you can until you reach it, basically, which could be a lifetime. But that's the most important thing, I think, is just choosing the direction and going for it and being open about what you're trying to do in your life. The final thing is to face reality and to embrace it. And a good example of this would be death. So think about this reality that we're all going to die one day. If you avoid it, if you kind of bury it down and think, oh, no, it doesn't matter, you don't live a full life as a result. If you think, wow, one day I'm going to die, it changes your perspective. You actually have to embrace the reality and think, wow, I'm going to die, so I better do something worthwhile with my life. I better value the relationships that I have while I have them. And it completely changes the way you feel about yourself and about the world because you're living in the authenticity and the reality of the world. So this is a tough one because a lot of people have different versions of reality or different perspectives. But if you can, try to embrace the basic truths. And the idea of death and dying is a very real truth. It's something that we all deal with. And I'm not trying to necessarily be negative here. There's a lot of wonderful positive truths as well, like love and self-growth and all those kind of things, and achieving what we want in life. But embrace the reality of what's going on, and you will find that it makes you more free. A perfect example of this is, and I've joked about this many times, but my hair, as I started to go bald, I kind of resisted the reality of shaving my head. I was like, no, I can hang on here. It looks good. It's fine. And it didn't look fine. And it took someone, my fiance, telling me, we need to shave your hair. It's done, to actually embrace the reality. And when I did, now I feel great. And in fact, it's much easier because I don't have to try and style this little frond of hair. I'm not trying, this is me. I'm a bald man, and who cares? And nobody else cares, and I don't care anymore, and I'm free as a result. So whatever your reality is, you have to embrace it. You have to sit with it, and you have to let it sort of become part of your life. And that makes you more authentic. The funny thing is, when you are embracing your reality of what you are, people love you for it. So lean into it more and embrace, hey, this is the reality. This is the deal. This is how I am. And you will find that people will actually love you as a result. So that was a long-winded way of saying these are ways that I've found to be authentic. Let me just recap those. So spend time alone, spend time on your passions and hobbies and interests, stop lying to others, stop withholding, choose your own direction in life, and embrace the reality of life as well. So that's 6 different things that you could do to be more authentic. Okay, last couple of insights that I have around authenticity. And for those of you who are watching here online, I hope this is valuable for you. The last ideas that I want to share are around the idea that authenticity, it's not an endpoint, it's a process, it's a journey. And this might sound kind of obvious, but I think we kind of trap ourselves into thinking, I'm now my authentic self. And what I would say, what I've learned is that you are emerging as a more authentic version of yourself. So if you think about yourself 10 years ago, you're probably a more authentic version of yourself today than you were 10 years ago. And you will be 10 years from now, even more authentic. Think of it that way, that it's a journey, it's an evolution, it's an emergence, and it completely changes your perspective. As I said in the beginning of this video part here, the challenge is falling into and out of authenticity at times in our lives. So if you think of it not as an endpoint, but as a process, you will have moments where you find yourself not being your authentic self. Maybe you're withholding, or you're lying, or you're not following your heart, or you're not spending time really tuning into your inner voice, or whatever. Realize that and go, okay, I'm in the process. And you will find that if you do that, you start to tune back into your authenticity, your real self, and it makes you a better version of yourself as a result of having gone away from it and come back, gone away from it and come back. So that's a really important point to think about is, am I in the process of becoming more authentic? I would say as well that you have to keep removing parts of yourself. This is a really good insight that I learned. It was actually from the story of Michelangelo, the artist creating the statue David. And I got a chance several years ago to go to Florence in Italy and actually see the statue, and it's incredible. Just one solid piece of marble carved, and it's this incredible piece of work. But what I learned is that the statue was built by him visualizing the man inside. Michelangelo's David was inside this big block of marble. So he basically said, I carved away anything that wasn't Michelangelo, that wasn't David. He carved away anything that wasn't David, and that's what emerged as a result. And I think that's a great metaphor to think about, because you kind of think of your life as you've got to keep building, you've got to keep creating. But actually what you've got to keep doing is removing, taking things away, and letting the real you emerge as a result. So just a way to think about it. In this process of becoming more authentic, think about removing the personas and the things that don't matter to you, and the lies and the withholding and all those activities that aren't actually important to you. And what you'll be left with is a more authentic version of yourself. So there we go. That's a lot of ideas about authenticity and how to be more authentic. I hope that's insightful for you. I want to leave you with a quote which I love, which is by Carl Jung. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that's a good way to sum up, I think, the journey of authenticity and becoming a more authentic version of yourself. All right, there we go. We are at 30 minutes right now, so we've already tipped over. That was quite a lot of information today. As I said, I've been doing a deep dive on this topic, and there's so much value in this idea of becoming a more authentic version of yourself. I have to say, even just doing these live versions of videos instead of actually pre-recording them, this feels more authentic. This feels like me more, because I'm having to just talk in the moment and express myself more and be who I am. So there is a lot of value in just exploring different ways to be more authentic in your life. So I hope that was valuable for you and it gives you some insights. And if you keep exploring it for yourself, I think you'll find a lot of reward from it. All right, let's get to some comments. So I see here, J World, you're back, my friend. Good to see you again. You said, keep up the YouTube grind. Yes, it's interesting. I go through periods where, and I don't want to say I get burned out, but I lose steam with my YouTube, because it is one of those things where you can get trapped in the metrics of thinking, oh, this video only got this number of views or this number of likes or whatever, or it didn't seem to go as well as my last video. I'm trying my very best to escape from that mindset and just enjoy the journey of creating. So this idea of the grind is very real, and it's something that I'm trying to find ways around by doing things exactly like this, like actually trying to explore different methods and ways of sharing ideas. And so hopefully that helps to keep the consistency, but not the grind, if you like, as we go through. And you also said, facts. Victim mindset is one of the worst things to happen to America. Yeah, so I assume that's referring to what I was talking about of being authentic, is the idea that you might think that being authentic is about complaining or saying you're a victim or whatever it is. And yeah, it can be a big trap if you fall into this mind virus of being a victim or seeing yourself as somehow victimized or held back by society or the system or the government or a group of people or whatever. I want to acknowledge that there are absolutely people who have a very difficult time in life, minorities and people who've really struggled. And I'm very aware of that. But I also want to say that I think a lot of us fall into the trap of using it much more than we need to. And so those people who really do need support to get out from under oppression, that's one thing and very, very important. But us as people, if we're falling into the trap of thinking that we're victims somehow and we're really not, that's on us. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate your comments. That's some important stuff to think about. And it looks like that is it for this week. So we are at time, my friends. As I mentioned earlier, if you get a chance, do check out the interview that Patrick Parker and I did last week. There were some really good insights in there. It was great to learn more about his life. And again, go and subscribe to his channel if you can. I think if you like what I'm doing here, you'll like what he's doing as well. He's got a wonderful approach to life and very balanced and very authentic, which is kind of one of the things that inspired the theme this week. So hope that was useful for you. As always, I hope that this has been insightful for you. I will be back next week. Next week, I may be an hour later. I'll have to look at my schedule, but I think I should be either 9 or 10 a.m. Pacific. So we'll be back for episode 5. But for today, this is episode 4 of Self-Improvement Saturday. I really hope that it was insightful for you. For those of you who watch it later, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. And for those of you who are here live, thanks for watching. And as I always say, thank you for improving yourself.